Alright guys, so I got a couple different Israel updates that I want to get to here real quick, starting with the IDF Chief of Staff, this guy Herzi Haveli, who, for some reason, feels the need to come out and clarify to his own commanders in the field in Gaza that, quote, "We are not on a campaign of killing, revenge, or genocide." He also adds that he's urging soldiers not to take anything that isn't ours, looting, essentially, or film revenge videos. Or in other words, some of the very many, war crime IDF TikToks that we have seen on social media over the last couple of months. So, listen, when you have to come out and make a declarative statement like this months into a war, after we have already seen countless, incalculable amounts of documented videos and other forms of evidence of your own war crimes, of your own politicians, your own soldiers, your own IDF commanders, openly admitting that their goals inside of Gaza is a mass ethnic cleansing, is to eventually resettle Gaza, is to expel them to the Sinai Peninsula, is that they do not believe that there is any such thing as an innocent man, woman, and child. When we have seen that over months and months and months, and then you feel the need to come out and make this kind of a statement, I think it's pretty revealing, right? In terms of what exactly this war is. Because you wouldn't think that with a normal military campaign, when you are actually doing a targeted, mission to eradicate this terrorist organization or whatever, you probably wouldn't need to come out and remind your own military that you're not supposed to be doing a genocide right now, that you're not supposed to be looting innocent civilians' houses in the midst of this, that you're not supposed to be doing TikTok war crime celebrations in front of the entire world. And so I want to show you this quick little video that was put out here by Jeremy Diamond of CNN, his reporting. And he's actually been doing a decent job. I also showed you guys his reporting on the IDF destroying a cemetery in front of a CNN crew, brazenly committing a war crime. And so he basically did a little bit of coverage on what the IDF has been up to lately. So let's watch a little bit of this.
This is a how-to video on how to blow up a mosque in Gaza. Format is internet fluent. The content is very real. Filmed, edited, and posted on Instagram by an Israeli soldier. It's one of dozens reviewed by CNN. For many in 2024, social media is everyday life. Israeli soldiers are no different, except they're fighting Israel's largest and most brutal war in decades. In video after video after video, soldiers document the destruction of Gaza and rejoice. They film detonations to use as wedding invitations. Among them are would-be comedians, whose videos satirizing the war show the devastation in Gaza.
Soldiers have...
Okay, so we're going to skip ahead here, but couple of different things, right? I mentioned this before, but the idea that even CNN, an organization that I think to a large extent has not had great coverage of Israel's genocidal war in Gaza so far, the idea that even CNN is able to find and verify, quote unquote, dozens of different IDF TikToks of them doing basically controlled demolitions of a lot of different buildings. That's what we just saw there when they're, doing a celebration and pulling the trigger like that. They're controlled demolitions. These are places they've already taken over. If they had any sort of firefight with Hamas whatsoever, then they've already gained control of the area. They filled it with explosives, and then they stepped back and had time to film a funny little cutesy TikTok video and then blow up a university or a school or a residential building or whatever the case may be. And so that's what we're witnessing. CNN was able to find dozens of those videos to verify, of them laughing, celebrating, dancing, as they are in this video we're about to watch here as well. What does it say about a military where this is a routine thing? I think it says two things. I think it says, number one, or maybe three things. Number one, that the IDF is filled with a bunch of simultaneously incompetent, and also people who do not view Palestinians as humans, incompetent soldiers who don't know what the fuck they're doing. A lot of them are reservists who are ill-trained or don't, have any sort of real experience outside of serving in the West Bank where they go and terrorize little children. So they don't have real experience in combat. But I think it also says that, you have an Israeli command leadership structure or an IDF leadership structure that basically doesn't give a shit about videos like this. I mean, do you think that even the American military, which is not the most moral military in the world to say the least, that we would allow dozens, hundreds, thousands potentially of our soldiers in the midst of combat in Iraq or Afghanistan to be posting videos of themselves proudly committing war crimes? I mean, this is something even like the US military would not allow our soldiers to get away with. We would immediately ban TikTok from every single soldier's phone. And somehow they're able to continue doing this repeatedly for months and months and months for the entire world to see. And I also think, like, my third point on this would be, what does it say about Israeli society as a whole, or the Israeli government or military, where, like, this kind of content is appealing to them in any way, shape, or form? Where you got, I mean, here you have a bunch of soldiers, and I'll mute this here real quick, who are standing in a group shouting, there's no such thing as uninvolved civilians in Gaza. They literally say it here, guys. You know our motto, there are no uninvolved civilians in Gaza. Is this appealing to Israelis? Is this appealing to a substantial portion of the population or to other IDF soldiers, where they literally think every single man, woman, and child, keep in mind half the population of Gaza is children, 13,000 killed so far, they're all terrorists in the minds of some of these people? And then they also finished off this clip, showing, well, yet another controlled demolition here / comedy TikTok war crime sketch from the IDF, but they also showed off some of these guys doing looting and destroying some of these civilian shops inside of Gaza. They've also been doing this in the West Bank, by the way. And so that brings me to this article that was just recently released by 972 magazine, which has been doing fantastic reporting throughout the entirety of this conflict since October 7th. But they talk about the looting aspect of all of this, which I touched on in one of my recent videos here, but it really is just so endemic to the IDF that nobody gives a shit that all of these soldiers are going in and just stealing Palestinian, kitchen utensils to jewelry to watches to kids' bicycles and everything else you could possibly imagine, money out of safes, whatever. So they say here, rugs, cosmetics, motorbikes, Israeli soldiers are looting Gaza homes in mass. Soldiers describe how stealing Palestinian property has become totally routine in the Gaza war with minimal pushback from commanders. So again, it's not as if these are just some bad apples in here. It's a structural thing, right? They don't view Palestinians as humans. They believe that they have the right, the justification, the ability to go and blow up every single bit of civilian infrastructure that they can get their hands on, that they can kill any Palestinian civilian that they feel like, and that they can then turn around and steal their shit and go back home and pretend as if it's some sort of like a souvenir that they just won at a carnival or something. They say that Israeli soldiers fighting in Gaza have not been shy about posting videos on social media gleefully documenting their wanton destruction of buildings and humiliation of Palestinian detainees. Some of these clips were even exhibited in South Africa's presentation at the International Court of Justice last month as evidence of genocide. And keep in mind, the ICJ is also now hearing that case on Israel's occupation of Palestine. Okay, which is separate from the South Africa case of genocide. This is on occupation and what can be done about, potentially getting back to like the 1967 UN advised borders for a potential future Palestinian state. And of course, Israel is attacking the legitimacy of that court case. The United States is attacking the legitimacy of it as well. But now they are actually under two separate cases for occupation and genocide at the highest court in the entire world right now of the United Nations. They say there is another war crime that is being regularly documented by Israeli soldiers that has garnered less attention and condemnation despite its prevalence, which is looting. In November, the Palestinian singer Hamada Nasrallah was shocked to discover a TikTok of a soldier playing the guitar that his father had bought him 15 years earlier. Other videos uploaded to the social media in recent months show Israeli soldiers boasting about finding wristwatches, unboxing someone's collection of soccer shirts, and stealing rugs, groceries, and jewelry. And of course, the groceries of this sticks out to me because just a couple days ago, I talked about that story that was published by Haaretz, where they were basically doing like a lifestyle promo of how amazing it is that some of these IDF troops are going and cooking these lavish meals with food that they've stolen from Palestinians in the kitchen of homes that they've destroyed, partially at least, or kicked Palestinians out of inside of Gaza, and how they're cooking all of these lavish meals. And one of them was like called bruschetta a la Gaza. I mean, just the most despicable shit you could possibly imagine. Treating this as if it's a vacation, as if this is the home that they will one day return to, I guess, which I think is what a lot of them see it as. But they continue here saying that indeed Since the start of Israel's ground invasion in late October, soldiers have been taking whatever they can get their hands on from the homes of Palestinians who have been forced to flee. More than an open secret, the phenomenon has been widely and uncritically reported in Israeli media, while rabbis from the religious Zionist movement have been answering soldiers' questions about what is permissible to loot according to Jewish law. I mean, listen, I don't give a fuck what quote-unquote Jewish law has to say about looting during wartime, but looting is a war crime. Point blank, period, under international law. You don't get to go invade a territory, kill/expel by force, by violence, the population of an area, and then steal their shit and take it back home. That's a war crime. So it could give less of a shit what Jewish law, what any other form of law other than actual established international law and the laws of war say. But they say that soldiers who returned from fighting in Gaza confirmed to 972 magazine and Local Call that the phenomenon is ubiquitous and that for the most part their commanders are allowing it to happen. People took things, mugs, books, each one a souvenir. That does it for him, said one soldier who admitted that he himself took a souvenir from one of the medical centers that the army had occupied. He's calling something that he stole from one of the many collapsing medical centers in Gaza a souvenir. Quite a souvenir there that you got. Just more evidence of your war crimes, I guess. They say another soldier who served in northern Gaza and central Gaza testified that soldiers took rugs, blankets, and kitchen utensils and explained that no briefing on the matter from the army, either before entering the field or while in the field, had happened. They said there was zero talk about it from the commanders. Everyone knows that people are taking things. It's considered funny. Considered funny. People say, quote, send me to The Hague. I hope they fucking do. You know what? I hope they fucking do. It doesn't happen in secret. The commander saw. Everyone knows. No one seems to care. No one seems to care. So I wonder why, with things like this happening, that Israel feels the need to go out of their way to attack the ICJ, to pretend as if any criticisms of Israel, to any sort of accusations of war crimes committed by Israel or IDF troops is anti-Semitic. I wonder why they feel the need to run with that line of logic. Maybe because this has become so endemic and widespread that the amount of war crimes and war criminals that you have in your own ranks is incalculable at this point, that you would have to prosecute so many soldiers that it would be, borderline absurd. I mean, this is the reality of what they've been doing inside of Gaza over the last couple of months. We also had this here just over the last couple of days. This was a couple of days ago here. UN relief chief appalled after Israel airstrike in Gaza injures Doctors Without Borders staff, kills family members. So they're now attacking more doctors. In this case, it's MSF, it's Doctors Without Borders, that have been killed in this strike, or at least injured in this strike, with their family being killed. And this, comes after that other story that I talked about a week ago at this point of Hind Rajab, who was trapped in a car with her dead family members who had been killed by Israel. And the Palestinian Red Crescent tried to send out a rescue crew to go and help her. And then they were bombed in an ambulance when they tried to go rescue her as well. So, 30 some odd of the 36 previously functioning hospitals in Gaza have been destroyed. Hundreds of healthcare workers have been casualties of this Israeli onslaught. And so that to me is nothing new here. This has been exactly what the entirety of the offensive has looked like since the beginning. Now, I also just wanted to mention this real quick, and I'll link this down below before we move on to the next part here. So these are the projections from Johns Hopkins about the projected deaths in Gaza, potentially over the next 6 months. And so they break it down here. Now, this may look like a lot of different random numbers, but the key parts here are, this is months 1 to 3, starting on February 7th, so we're a couple weeks removed from that, but this is months 1 to 3, and then you have months 4 to 6, and then the total projection period, which is from February 7th to August 6th of this year. And they break it down. Is there going to be an immediate ceasefire? Is there going to be a status quo where you remain on the current trajectory? Or is there going to be an escalation? Now, unfortunately, it does seem like an escalation is the most likely out of these three options here, right? And so they do these projections on what kinds of deaths are likely to happen, what the range is. And when you skip down here to total, including some of the epidemics, as people are forced into these tightly packed refugee camps and tent cities where they're sleeping on without any sort of like sanitary apparatus with them, with no beds, with sleeping on mud floors and without adequate access to clean drinking water and food and medical supplies and all of that, you do have a likelihood of a spread of any sort of communicable disease. And so the total, including epidemics that they point out here, is 40,960. And the actual estimate here is between 31,000 to 100,000 in the next 1 to 3 months. 1 to 3 months. Upwards of 100,000 people could be killed inside of Gaza from all of these different various causes. And it's not unexpected. I mean, we've been talking about for a while now how, disease and starvation are likely to outpace the actual deaths from airstrikes at any time now. You extrapolate it out here towards August 6th, assuming that this war continues on for that long, and the number gets as high as 259,000. 259,000. I mean, that's like, what, 1/8 of the entire population of Gaza in just less than a year of war? Now, we also had this, and so this is going to be the second part of this block here that I'm doing. So, we had this Republican representative who was confronted by, some activist who was trying to pressure him on his endless support for Israel's genocidal war in Gaza, and this guy basically just, I don't know what else to say other than he screams the quiet part out loud here and just basically calls for the elimination of all Palestinians. So let's go ahead and watch this.
Over 300 healthcare workers have been killed. Have you called for a ceasefire?
Let's be clear. Hamas raped, murdered babies.
They did not. That's fake news.
No evidence of that. I've seen the footage, and you haven't.
I've seen the footage of
You've seen footage of
shredded children's bodies. And that's my taxpayer dollars. We're going to bomb those kids.
So I think we should kill them all, if that makes you feel better. Everybody, Hamas.
Do you even have heart?
Yes.
Do you have heart? Do you have a family? Do you have a family?
Hamas and the Palestinians have been attacking Israel for 20 years, and it's time to pay the price. Israel's.
Okay. So, let's be clear what happened here. He was asked a question, right? She was talking about how she has seen videos of shredded Palestinian babies, men, women, children who have, been killed as a part of this Israeli onslaught. And his response, after a direct question about children being killed by Israel with U.S. support, is to say, we should kill them all. That was his response. She wasn't questioning him. She wasn't going out there and saying, why do you hate Hamas? And then he said, we should kill all Hamas. No, she asked him a question about the children in Gaza who were being killed. And his response was to say, we should kill them all. We should kill them all. And then he followed it up later by saying, this is foreign policy. And beforehand, he said something about how Hamas had raped and murdered babies. I mean, listen, I've been saying this since the beginning. Hamas certainly committed war crimes on October 7th. But the idea, as was pushed by many people towards the beginning, that there were like the 40 beheaded babies claim, that was disproven. That was entirely made up. There were, I think, less than a handful of actual toddlers, infants, who were killed in the October 7th attack. There were around 36 children overall who were killed in Hamas's October 7th attack inside of southern Israel. Israel has killed 13,000 children in Gaza. So, to take the brutality of the Hamas attack on October 7th and to say that justifies what Israel is doing, it again, is just a self-admission that you don't care about the deaths of innocent civilians. You don't care about protecting children or women from sexual abuse, especially considering that the United Nations just came out with a statement recently condemning reports that the IDF is engaging in widespread sexual abuse of women and children inside of Gaza right now amid their offensive. You don't have a principled stance against this. You don't care about innocent civilians. You're just doing a flex to show your support for Israel. That's what this is. It is completely one-sided. There is not a shred of empathy or care whatsoever for Palestinians. Almost as if you don't view them as human beings. I don't know how else you view this, where you can insinuate that Hamas is the most evil organization that has ever existed on the face of the planet because of what they did on October 7th, but Israel is the most moral army on the face of the planet because of their response to October 7th. Even though what Israel has done has killed more civilians in a total number and has killed a higher percentage of civilians than Hamas's attack on October 7th, has killed thousands and thousands of children as a part of their offensive, compared to potentially dozens in Hamas's attack. There's literally no metric you could look at this. While again, I admit there were war crimes that were committed by Hamas on October 7th, there's no metric you could look at this by in an honest and genuine way and come to the conclusion that Hamas is an evil terrorist organization and Israel is a moral army. If Hamas is an evil terrorist organization, okay, it's fine to say that, then Israel is a super mega terrorist organization, if you want to use that kind of terminology, by any objective metric. The destruction of civilian infrastructure, the killing of innocent men, women, and children, there's no metric you could possibly look at this and come to this kind of a conclusion. Now, I also want to point out that obviously, I mean, the only Palestinian American representative within our Congress, Rashida Tlaib, was censured by Congress. She was censured by a majority of Congress for saying, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Now, people obviously distorted that and pretended as if Rashida Tlaib wanted to genocide the Jews or something like that. Entirely bullshit straw man that people came up with. But she gets censured for that. This guy can come out and literally say, in response to a question about Palestinian children, kill them all, and nothing happens. Is this guy going to be censured in the same way that Rashida Tlaib was for calling for freedom for Palestinians? No, of course not. I mean, again, Brian Mast, this other Republican dickhead, came to Congress wearing an IDF uniform. He wore the uniform of a foreign country's military to Capitol Hill. And then went on to call, Palestinian civilians non-existent. To say we wouldn't say the same thing about innocent Nazi civilians, so we shouldn't pretend as if there's innocent Palestinian civilians. The kinds of despicable, barbaric statements that right-wing members of Congress get away with, that pro-Israel members of Congress get away with, while simultaneously they're able to turn around and demonize somebody like Rashida Tlaib as if she's like a terrorist or something. It is just utterly insane. Of course, we also have more statements that have come out recently from top Israeli politicians. This one was, and I'm not joking here, guys, from the Minister of Social Equality and Women's Advancement, Mai Golan, of the Likud, Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition, during a Knesset hearing about the motion to expel the member of the Knesset, Ofer Kasif, who is one of the only redeemable members of the Knesset right now in Israel. Ofer Kasif, shout out to him. And she said, quote, "I am personally proud of the ruins of Gaza, and that every baby, even 80 years from now, will tell their grandchildren what the Jews did." Okay. What the fuck? So, first off, this guy, Ofer Kasif, they're trying to expel him entirely, to ban him from the equivalent of the Israeli Congress over there, right? They're trying to ban him for being critical of the war on Gaza, because he is not as batshit fucking crazy as people like this. So they're trying to expel him from the Knesset for his critiques of Benjamin Netanyahu, for his critiques of, in many ways, Zionism throughout his recent past, and for obviously criticizing this war. But she says she's, number one, proud of the ruins of Gaza. That in and of itself is insane. You're proud of the mass destruction of civilian life and infrastructure. Okay, thank you for saying the quiet part out loud. You should be tried at The Hague. Thank you very much. But she also says that every baby, even 80 years from now, will tell their grandchildren what the Jews did. What the fuck? I mean, this is more anti-Semitic than anything that I've heard Rashida Tlaib ever say in her life. What are you even saying at this point? You want to inflict so much damage, so much psychic damage on the people of Gaza, so much terrorism, that 80 years from now, generations from now, they will be talking about what the Jews did? I don't even know how to respond to this, guys. I mean, we also had another example here. You will die. Your children will die. Your grandchildren will die. There won't be a Palestinian state. There won't be, said Hanok Milbitsky from Likud, again, a member of the Knesset. Said there will not be a Palestinian state. So, I mean, these are the kinds of things that they're saying, guys. They're proud of this shit. They're happy about this shit. Now, I'm going to finish off here real quick. Of course, Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister within Israel, again came out and said the quiet part out loud on something that we have been talking about for weeks now, and that we have frequently been called conspiracy theorists for pointing out, which is the basic fact that, of course, Israel is prioritizing, their military offensive against the people of Gaza and their overall plan to ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip, as well as protect the political aspirations and careers of guys like Benjamin Netanyahu over the lives of these civilians who are in Gaza. And so Smotrich came out and said this straight up: the hostages are not the most important thing. He added that we need to destroy Hamas, and that is very important. Okay, so there you go. I mean, listen, I don't want to hear shit about, from the United States State Department, from Joe Biden, about how the reason we can't have a ceasefire right now is because we have to continue the war to save the hostages. Listen, they don't give a single solitary shit about the hostages. That's the reality of what's happening right now. They want to prolong this war. They want to expand this war. And that's in order to save their own political asses. Because if this war ended tomorrow, Benjamin Netanyahu is done. His political career is over. He's likely going to be out of office as soon as possible. He is, in all likelihood, going to be potentially criminally, implicated in some ways with some of the previous cases that have been brought against him. He's doing this for his own personal benefit. And he's willing to sacrifice every single one of the Israeli hostages that are left with inside Gaza in order to do that, right? And I mean, even if you don't believe that at a surface level from his own personal motivations, look at the facts on the ground of the only way that hostages inside of Gaza have been returned to Israel has been through the temporary ceasefire that we had previously a couple months ago, where many hostages were able to return to Israel in exchange for a temporary ceasefire. Hamas just recently proposed another ceasefire proposal that over a couple different stages would have resulted in every single one of the hostages being returned to Israel in exchange for a long-term ceasefire. You have that on the table. You could do that right now if you wanted to. If you wanted to get every single one of the remaining hostages home, alive, safe, you could do that right now. You're refusing to do that because you want to continue the war. And so does the United States. And the Joe Biden administration, obviously, again, yesterday just vetoed another resolution at the United Nations calling for a ceasefire, and continues to try to push for more aggressive supplies of weapons to Israel, continues to give the most pathetic defenses of Israel's obviously illegal under international law offensive military campaign inside of Gaza and genocidal campaign in Gaza. And it really is like, on top of it being, I think, obvious bullshit to anybody who really understands what's going on right now, in terms of these State Department press conferences that we get from John Kirby or Matthew Miller or whatever the case may be, it also is just absolutely obliterating any sort of credibility that we had, even a shred of it, remaining on the international stage. The entire rest of the world is looking at the United States and Israel right now and is laughing at us. Laughing at the idea that we still are trying to pretend like we are a bastion for human rights and freedom and democracy, as we are actively aiding and abetting in a genocide against an occupied people that Israel is going in and slaughtering with our weapons. As we simultaneously pretend that Israel is a democracy and not an apartheid, that there is no occupation of the Palestinian people, even though it has been going on for decades, that there is no, war crimes or violations of international law being committed in Gaza, even though the IDF is literally posting them on TikTok for us. I mean, it is approaching levels of utter absurdity at this point. And unfortunately, with all of the, suffering of innocent men, women, and children on the ground right now, it really doesn't look like this is likely to subside anytime soon. If anything, it looks like we are much more likely to head for an escalation at some point.